Have I watched too many awful YouTubers? His content is apolitical necessarily, right? Like his content is never like overtly political at all. But this is incredibly refreshing. This is a entirely political, normie focused YouTube video. It's awesome. All right, let's watch Drew Gooden talk about how greed is destroying the world.
3 years, I've heard over and over again that a recession is about to hit. The stock market is going to crash. The housing prices are going to come back down to earth any day now. And yet somehow all of these things keep not happening. And for most people, it doesn't make sense. What do you mean the economy's good? My dentist just tried to get me to sign up for a credit card. Since the pandemic, the cost of living has skyrocketed. Inflation is out of control. Groceries have never been more expensive. Layoffs are happening at an alarming rate. At this point, a college degree might be more likely to get you into crippling debt than it is to help you find a job. And even if you have savings, you're more than likely one stroke of bad luck away from losing it all to medical bills. And yet some people will look you right in the eyes and tell you, I don't know what you're talking about. The numbers are green.
Is this guy stupid?
The problem is each of these people are kind of correct in their own way. This is the best the economy has ever been if you already have money. If you bought a house 5 years ago, there's a chance it's already doubled in value. If you invested in the S&P 500 in 2021, you could be up as much as 80%. And that's not like saying, you know, you'd be rich if you just bought Bitcoin in 1973. That's just the regular stock market. You didn't need to have some genius level of foresight to be able to do that. You just needed to already have a bunch of cash sitting. And obviously for the overwhelming majority of people, that is not the case. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're not thinking about the stock market. If you're in your 20s, you haven't even been working long enough to save any money to invest. You don't get to benefit from rising home equity if you don't own a house. The only thing this graph represents to you is how much further away that dream is getting. Right now, the average age of home buyers is 59 years old. What a depressing statistic. This is the problem with an economy that disproportionately
Drew doesn't want 59-year-olds to own homes, chat.
benefits asset holders instead of the people still trying to earn them. Wealth grows exponentially, but wages aren't even outpacing inflation, which means if your salary hasn't been going up every year, you're effectively making less money. Meanwhile, the fastest way to make $1 million is to just already have 10 million. Leave it in an investment account for a year and congratulations, you now have $11 million. At a larger scale, this is why it feels like there's two different economies happening and they're both moving in opposite directions. 50% of the stock market is owned.
Oh my God. This is awesome. This video is a banger, dude. What is happening?
By the top 1%, and only 1% is owned by the bottom 50%. Don't let somebody tell you that these numbers going up should discredit your own lived experience. Don't let somebody who's benefited from untaxed inheritance or years of compound interest granting them passive income tell you that your problem is you're just not working hard enough. No, the real answer is, sorry, you should have been born sooner. Have you thought about that? Maybe instead of wasting all that time farting around kindergarten class, you should have been investing in real estate. It's not my fault you're lazy. People are getting squeezed in every direction while also being gaslit into thinking that it's somehow our fault. There's CEOs in earnings calls bragging about how they get to make customers pay for inflation so they don't have to. The economy is so bad right now, I'm about to segue into an extremely ill-timed brand deal in a video about greed. You think I like looking like a hypocrite? Of course not. But my avocado toast isn't going to pay for itself. Hi, I'm Upside Down. And I'm here to tell you about today's sponsor, NordVPN. If you're watching this video, you're probably connected to the internet. And if you're not watching this video, how are you hearing this? Anytime you're connected to the internet, especially when you're on public Wi-Fi, you should consider using a virtual private network for an extra layer of security. A VPN creates a nice, warm, encrypted tunnel for all your precious data to pass through as it gets communicated between your devices and the internet, keeping your sensitive information safe from criminals, losers, and especially freaks. But NordVPN takes online security a step further with Threat Protection Pro. All you gotta do is flip it on in the desktop app and it'll block dangerous ads, check your downloading files for malware. It can even warn you if you stumbled onto a fake online before you try to buy something that doesn't actually exist. You may think you're way too smart to fall for something like that, but take it from me, it could happen to anyone. You might have also heard that a VPN allows you to unlock websites and content that may be restricted in your area. Just by changing your virtual location in the app, you can essentially trick the internet into thinking that that's where you are, unlocking that show, movie, or YouTube video that randomly got blocked in 98 countries for some reason in the process. If you want to try out NordVPN for yourself with a 30-day money-back guarantee, go to nordvpn.com/Gooden for my exclusive deal with 4 extra months added on. You can also get there by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on the screen. But don't scan me. It's not going to do anything. I'm just a guy. Thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. The economy sucks ass for most people right now. The only reason we're not technically in a recession is because the GDP is still going up. But the only reason the GDP is still going up is because of the AI industry. But the only reason that even looks as good as it does is because a handful of companies are just like passing money back and forth. But there's no recession. You're hallucinating that. Because the AI industry is now single-handedly propping up the entire global economy, there's really only two paths forward. Worst case scenario, turns out it is all the bubble pops in spectacular fashion, trillions of dollars of investments cannot get paid out, and everything goes up in flames. Or best case scenario, a few billionaires get even richer. Wait, is that what we're hoping for? All right, you're gonna have to bear with me while I go on another AI rant here. I know I do this like every 6 months, but it's not going away. It doesn't count as beating a dead horse if the horse is still alive. We gotta kill that horse first. People largely do not like AI and are worried about the future it imposes. It's currently being used to make a bunch of promises that almost no one asked for. The main appeal of it comes from corporations who see advancements in AI as a way to further reduce their dependence on human labor. The only thing cheaper than outsourcing jobs is just eliminating them altogether. The wet dream that soils the sheets of every CEO is a company that's somehow run entirely on its own, and they can just sit back and collect all the profits for themselves. No more dealing with pesky labor laws or health insurance or can I have Saturday off? My family died. No! Shut up. That's the eventual goal, and why they're all pouring billions of dollars into NVIDIA chips and data centers and cool shirts for Mark Zuckerberg. And in the meantime, we're stuck with ChatGPT, a humanized Google search designed to affirm whatever belief you share with it, even if it's incredibly dangerous, or generative video apps that are already being used to trick people into thinking something happened that didn't actually happen. Awesome technology. I'm so glad this exists. And I think the best thing we can do to fight back against AI is to simply not engage with it. The problem is, even if you don't use these tools, if you live in certain parts of the country, you might be paying for them. There's been a lot of really good investigative journalism done on all these new data centers that are popping up around the country, who's funding them and who's getting screwed over in the process. For example, some residents in New Jersey who noticed that their power bill kept going up, even though they were actually using less electricity than usual. Well, it turns out it's due to an overall supply cost. Basically, when the total amount of electricity usage in an area goes up, power companies tend to pass those higher costs onto their customers. And for the past several years, electricity usage has been skyrocketing, with over half of that increase coming solely from data centers. Your utility bill is going up because Elon Musk wants to pretend to have a girlfriend. You see, AI doesn't just exist in some theoretical space. It has to be trained on billions of gigabytes of data, and that data has to be stored in a physical location. To power this, it requires an absurd amount of electricity, which generates an absurd amount of heat, which then requires an absurd amount of water to cool off. Most of these buildings use over 1 million gallons per day, roughly the equivalent of 10,000 people. This would be even more problematic if they were being built in areas where water is extremely scarce. So we should be good as long as we don't build a bunch of them in like the middle of the desert. Whoops. But to be fair, they are extremely efficient about it. They don't just use the water, they also poison it. Every part of this process is wasteful and destructive, and this is only the beginning. AI is still a relatively new phenomenon, so we're only just starting to see the effects of this. But the Department of Energy projects that the percentage of electricity used by data centers could nearly triple in just the next 3 years. And who gets to pay for it? We do. It's hard for me to accurately express how infuriating this is. The giant buildings that power this stupid technology are being subsidized by people who just happen to live near them. Oh, but hold on, because they're technically contributing to the operating costs. So does that mean that they get to share in the eventual profits? No, of course not. They're more like involuntary investors, doing it for free. Or really, worse than free, because a lot of them are being kept awake at night by the deafening hum endlessly emitting from the factory shoved into the backyard of their homes that have now surely plummeted in value as a result. But hey, at least they're doing all of this to make a product that hopes to replace 80% of humanity. It's not enough that these people already own everything they could ever want. They could so easily afford to pay for these things without even noticing that that money is gone.
The reason why I'm not even pausing is because he is spitting. There's no additions, nothing else I can add on to this. He is covering all bases here.
But why would they do that when they could simply have poor people pay for it instead? Because nothing will ever be enough for them. You know, when a rich person makes some...
Also, of course, it's not only that, but the AI is also trained on your labor as well. It's trained on your work. It's trained on your inputs. You are literally making this machine that will inevitably replace you, the labor force, with no alternatives, by the way. It's not like you're going to get subsidies for it. It's not like your life is going to get easier because of it. You're just going to still do some kind of service job. You are training the machines to replace you and also subsidizing the costs in the process of development. It's awesome.
Deal to screw over the working class. People will joke that they just need that money to buy their 4th yacht. And like, I don't even think it's that. They could buy 1,000 yachts and still not run out of money. They don't want to spend their wealth. They just want it to get bigger. It's the same obsession with seeing number go up that keeps me addicted to old school RuneScape, except the only life that's ruining is my own. What they have is a disease. They have been scourged with the blight of insatiable greed, cursed to an endless pursuit of wealth that will never bring them true happiness. I would almost feel bad for them if they weren't actively destroying the world in the process. One of the most frustrating things about this problem is that if you even try to suggest that maybe these guys should just have a little bit less money, like you guys can still be rich, whatever, just turn it down a notch because you're kind of making terrible for everybody else, you're treated like you're crazy. No, this is the American way. If you don't like it, then leave. And yet these ideas aren't radical. They're not even new. Most people who advocate for a more progressive tax system are only calling for a return to something that used to exist in this country. We just forgot about it. So I think it's important to do a little history lesson here. If you can believe it, there was a time where the working class in this country actually had it really good. And it was mostly because things got so bad during the Great Depression that the government was worried about the country collapsing. Thousands of banks had closed, millions of people lost their entire life savings, unemployment peaked at 25%. So in fear of a revolution happening, the government was like, all right, fine, we'll give you livable wages. Just please put that musket down. I don't like the way you're looking at me. So the New Deal was born, and with it came Social Security, better labor standards, the right to unionize, a national minimum wage, an 8-hour workday. And over the next 2 to 3 decades, America became the most prosperous country on earth. Productivity skyrocketed and wages rose with them. Extra profits weren't just redistributed to employees, but their employers were proud to do it. They would brag about how lucrative it was to work for them. Look, 37% of profits went to our employees last year because this is a team effort, and when we win, they win. In 1943, Johnson & Johnson puts out this mission statement that's like, here's our list of priorities in order. Customers number 1, we got to make good products. Employees number 2, everyone who works.
Have I watched too many like awful YouTubers that like this is just entirely refreshing? I feel like this kind of commentary, especially from like somewhat progressive, but still like his content is apolitical necessarily, right? Like his content is never like overtly political at all, but this is incredibly refreshing. It's awesome. I love it. For the first time in a long time, we are watching. Because like I look, I was gonna say non-slop, but like I watch Eric's videos, Ben a Minute, and numerous other content creators in general, and they are political content creators. Their style might be looser in general, but like they are political content creators. Like Drew, on the other hand, is more so someone who does jokes on the internet. Like he has a political point of view for sure, and it sometimes comes across in his videos, but this is an entirely entirely political, normie-focused YouTube video. It's awesome.
Needs to feel valued and respected. Our community, number 3, we all want to live in a better world, and as a company of our size, we feel like it's our responsibility to contribute to that however we can. And finally, all the way at the bottom, our shareholders can just have whatever's left. Of course, we need to make a profit to survive and grow, but that should just come naturally as a byproduct of focusing on these 3 tenets. Compared to modern corporate standards, this is all such a foreign concept that it almost sounds like it's coming from a fictional universe. But it actually happened. This was just America 70 years ago. During this time, what do you think the tax rate was on the wealthiest Americans? For reference, in 2025, the highest income tax bracket is supposed to be around 24%, but because of how many ways there are to circumvent the rules, it often ends up being as little as 3%. For someone like Elon Musk, who doesn't take a salary from Tesla and instead just owns a large percentage of its stock, as long as he doesn't sell any of that stock, then technically there's no income to tax him on. Now, he can still leverage the value of those stocks to make purchases, you know, like how money works, but it's still not taxable because of the rules. This is how people like him and Jeff Bezos can be, in terms of net worth, 2 of the richest people on the planet, and in some years pay $0 in taxes. In the middle of the 20th century, the tax rate on the ultra wealthy was not 3% or 20% or even 50%. It was between 70 and 90. It honestly sounds crazy, but even a lot of the people being taxed understood that it was necessary for society to continue to exist. And having a strong middle class was a crucial investment into the future of the country. But I don't know, man. I just think it's kind of interesting that during what's referred to as the golden age of capitalism, the government did a bunch of socialism. During the period of time that birthed the idea of the American dream, the government was taxing the absolute out of the richest Americans and using that money to provide jobs and welfare programs for everybody else. A single income household working a regular ass job could afford to start a family, buy a house, send their kids to college, and retire at a reasonable age. No wonder people who grew up then gush about capitalism the way they do, because for them it was great. But at this point, it is disingenuous to use that time period as the example for why capitalism works, because that version of it stopped existing a long time ago. The generation of people who started as beneficiaries of a more equitable system changed the rules once the roles were reversed and they had the power. So what the hell happened? Everything was going great. What changed? Well, there were a lot of things, obviously, but one of the first big dominoes was the US's involvement in the Vietnam War, which was expensive and deadly. But to be fair, also accomplished nothing. And this had long-term ramifications. America had been diverting so much money away from manufacturing and towards defense that it opened the door for other growing industrialized countries to surpass them. More and more products were becoming cheaper to import than they were to produce. This led to factories getting shut down, unemployment starting to creep back up. A recession hits, and we're now facing a pivotal fork in the road in the late 70s. Either we could go back to what worked in the past, prioritize the working class, reinvest into our own infrastructure, try to help lift people out of poverty they've fallen into through no fault of their own, or we say, fuck the government, we don't owe you. We're stupid, isn't that right? I don't even know my own name. Exactly. The deal is you pay taxes and we don't do anything. And you like that, right? They like that? Sounds good to me. The prevailing philosophy throughout the 80s became trickle-down economics. The logic being, oh man, these rich people are really handcuffed, you know. If we lower the corporate tax...
I'm losing my mind. He went from New Deal redistributive policies to Reaganomics. What is this video, bro? He's hitting every note. This is perfect for normies. No convoluted, complicated, like historical perspective. He's just giving you, this is a great entry point video. A great entry point video into this kind of stuff. This is the type of that like actually turns people, I think. And especially coming from a person who's not like as tarnished in his reputation as being like a political propagandist and a scary, dangerous person, this will be very impactful, in my opinion. This is great. Shouts out Drew Gooden.
From 70 all the way to eventually 28%, then companies will use all that extra money to pay their employees more. I mean, if there's one thing we know about rich people, is that they're always looking out for the little guy. Now, for some reason, this hasn't worked out yet, but it's only been 55 years, so the jury's still out. See, I would argue that part of the reason why companies in the 40s and
Just one more trickle-down economic cycle, and then it will trickle down. One more lane, and traffic will go away. One more war, and American prosperity is imminent. One more year of deregulation and tax breaks for the super wealthy, and it will trickle down immensely in ways that you have never even seen before. You never even thought of. It's going to trickle down so hard, chat. Trust. One more highway lane.
were so generous with their extra profits was because the tax rate was so high. I mean, think about it. If you're faced with the decision between giving a huge chunk of money to the government or redistributing it back to the employees who helped you earn it in the first place, you would be much more likely to do the latter because it's an investment in your own company. It's a mutually beneficial exchange. Well-compensated workers are proven to be more loyal and more productive, and those are two things that you want. Now, there were other factors as well, loosening a lot of anti-monopoly regulations, the legalization of stock buybacks, but this dramatically lower tax rate is a big reason why.
Destruction of labor unions as well. Deregulation and destruction of labor unions also played a big role.
By the 80s serves as the dividing line on just about every economic graph you could look at. This was the beginning of a long and continuous transfer of wealth from the working class to the top 1%. And while it would be very easy to just blame all of this on then President Reagan, that would only be mostly true. Sure, this new approach opened the door for more exploitation and greed, but you still needed a few scumbags willing to go through that door for the evolution to be complete. And nobody sprinted through it faster than one man. The real-life cartoon villain who designed the blueprint that most modern CEOs are still following to this day. His name was Jack Welch, and he's often referred to as the man who broke capitalism. During his tenure as CEO of General Electric, he turned the once quintessential American company that reshaped people's lives and supplied hundreds of thousands of high-paying jobs all across the country into a worthless carcass and a joke of a corporation, all while he became one of the richest people on the planet. In the century before Jack Welch took the reins, GE invented things like X-ray machines, jet engines, TVs, radios, and just about any kitchen appliance you can think of. In the 1980s, Jack invented laying people off. That was his big idea. What if we just fire a bunch of people? And then we don't have to spend as much money. It seems so simple and obviously very commonplace today, but before Jack, companies were not doing this. It was almost seen as un-American to fire somebody unless you absolutely had to. But Jack didn't think like everybody else. He was a pioneer. He bravely instituted the rank and yank system where every year the bottom 10% of employees would get laid off no matter what. Not because they all deserved to be fired, but just because they fell on the wrong side of a spreadsheet. What's that? You were 3 years away from retirement and now you no longer qualify for pension? Okay. Then die. And to be clear, the layoffs were also not because the company wasn't
Also, it really helps the bottom line when you do that. That's less expenditure. Hello.
profitable. It very much was, but it just wasn't profitable enough. See, when you routinely shut down entire facilities, you uproot thousands of lives, you create a toxic and selfish work environment where loyalty is replaced with fear, and if you're a company with the size and influence that GE had at the time, you can almost single-handedly destroy any semblance of a middle class across all of America.
Also, when you fire the bottom 10%, the rest of the workers notice that and they get very worried, and it causes them to work extra hard.
This number gets a little bit bigger. So it's kind of a fair trade. GE was at the forefront of this countrywide philosophical transition from an economy that cared about making things and rewarding the labor it took to do so, to an economy that only cared about shareholder value and would prioritize anything it could to make that number go up. But the thing about the stock market is it's mostly just about perception. As long as something seems to be growing in value, then people will be more likely to invest in it, which will cause it to be more valuable, even if it shouldn't be. A lot of what Jack did during his time as CEO did not make the company better, but it did make it bigger. And in the eyes of Wall Street, that was all that mattered. I mean, come on, a business that relies on something boring like selling products can only grow so much. But a company that's constantly acquiring other companies simply has no ceiling. I mean, they could be worth infinity dollars when you think about it. So that's what they did. Over the next few decades, GE bought and sold hundreds of companies, and Jack was lauded for his brilliance because from the outside, everything seemed to be working. I mean, sure, they were becoming a bloated, nonsensical hodgepodge of unrelated businesses, eroding the company's infrastructure and prioritizing constant quarterly gains over any long-term sustainability, but no one gives it because the stock price has never been high. They've stumbled upon an infinite money glitch. They're just alchemizing value out of thin air. It gets to a point where the company founded by Thomas Edison doesn't even make their own light bulbs anymore. It's cheaper to get them somewhere else. Who cares? All they care about now is their ballooning financial division. They're issuing high-interest loans. They become a massive holder of subprime mortgages, a famously good investment to make in the early 2000s. Literally whatever it took to juice the numbers, that's what they would do. After about 30 years of short-term decisions that received instant gratification from shareholders but were gradually making things worse for the company and its dwindling number of employees, GE had become severely overvalued. And it wasn't until right after Jack retired with his $400 million severance package where his successors stepped in and were like,
Wait, this doesn't make any sense.
the time bomb Jack planted explodes in their faces and GE spends the next 20 years slowly bleeding out. And at this point, they couldn't fall back on just like selling microwaves because they'd been cutting corners on production so long that nobody wanted to buy any of their garbage anymore. And of course, they had fallen way too far behind on innovation because they spent all their money on acquisitions instead of research. The company that helped bring electricity to America was mercifully laid to rest, split into 3 separate institutions, none of which have come close to the dominance or influence that GE once had over the American economy. But here's the thing. You know who isn't affected at all by the cataclysmic downfall of General Electric? Jack.
So the stream is watching someone else's video while Hassan just chews. Where is Electric Dog? I do sometimes also electrocute my dog, but I didn't bring my dog to Ireland, so unfortunately, you won't get the dog electrocution part of the broadcast. I like that you didn't get what you wanted out of the first statement, so you had to come in with this one. There is not much I can add to this video. The reality of the matter is Drew Gooden is cooking, you know? Yeah, Kaya's getting a break from the electrocution. She is safe for another day. Yeah, she's safe for a couple days. But when I actually come back from trips, I electrocute her extra hard. So it's 12 a.m. in Dublin right now. I always thought it's on stream during the day. This is crazy. I do always stream during the day. Do I know Drew? Yes, I do. And I really like him. This video is really good. Just joined Why in Ireland? Just a vacation? No. Not gonna lie, this is your weakest subject. You haven't said a lot on it for the many months. It's been an issue, or rather should be considered an issue in my opinion. Yes, this is not my entire life's work. You're correct. It's true. I really do need to do more in terms of talking about how American material conditions deteriorated to the degree that it did. I need to talk more about that kind of stuff. Yeah, I need to talk more about the pitfalls and evils of capitalism. Definitely not enough of that on this broadcast.
Because he's dead now. He already got to live his entire life of luxury and adoration without ever having to deal with the fallout caused by his actions. He took control of a building with a rock-solid foundation and just kept scrapping it for parts until the only thing left for it to do was collapse under its own weight. But by that point, he was long gone. I believe that this is the goal of those who now follow in his footsteps. They don't need to care about whether or not what they're doing is...
Like, if I'm going to be super duper critical, the only thing I would say is that, like, he talks more so about individual CEOs and less about how every single capital owner is either taking advantage of this structure or participants in it because it is their class interest. That's it. The only thing missing from this is basically that is the class dynamic, the class analysis. That's it. But overall, it's a fantastic video. And it's also, not only is it a fantastic video, but I think it's a really good video for for explaining this problem to the average person who doesn't really think about it too much or recognizes that there is an issue but doesn't necessarily put it together in this way.
Harmful or unsustainable. As long as the facade can be maintained long enough for them to reap the rewards, it doesn't matter that the ship is sinking behind them because they have a lifeboat. It doesn't matter that America spent the past 60 years exporting all its jobs and decimating the economies of small towns all across the country. A few hundred people responsible for those things already got to live long, happy lives. They don't give a This cutthroat corporate culture that Jack pioneered is still seen all around us today. And through the magic of time, it's only getting worse. CEOs make $1,000 every second while their employees have to piss in water bottles so they don't fall behind. Routine layoffs, regardless of if a company is even struggling, are so normalized that it's just something we've come to expect. The stock market rules the world. Every major decision is dictated by this inherently volatile and short-sighted metric. And look at where that's gotten us. Millions without jobs, an epidemic, and a concentration of wealth that should be seen as a threat to humanity. Even while owning everything, billionaires live in fear of losing it. So they weasel their way into politics, they influence elections, they buy policy changes, they use their wealth to reshape the world to benefit them even further. They try to control narratives by buying up news outlets. They can dictate what's on our social media feeds. They spend an enormous amount of resources on pitting us all against each other, so we're too distracted to see that the real problem is them.
Should the human race survive?
Everything kind of sucks right now, and as a result, most people are justifiably pretty angry.
I did do a lot better than Peter Thiel in front of Ross Douthat. Also, I got a new really funny take. Hassan Piker platforms terrorists, promotes political violence, and does shameless propaganda for murderous authoritarian regimes. So why is he in such good standing with American politicians and progressive media? This is, I think, is this the same group? Center for New Liberalism. I love guys like this, man. Haven't seen the platform's terrorists taking a hot minute. I know. It's because of those things. If your worldview is that America, and by extension the broader West, is a uniquely evil actor in the world stage, his defense of authoritarianism is not even among Hassan's worst attributes. This is one of those circumstances where the implicit yet should be a because. That is, you point out the XYZ. Yeah, it's weird that this guy's entire fan base is saying it's because they're all those libtards are in on it and they love authoritarianism, terrorism, platforming. Interesting how a self-described liberal has just an entire fan base that sounds like the average run-of-the-mill dumb Republican. I wonder how that happened. Go read the article. Sure. That's the group that my lady's with. They must have been in the group chat talking about you, Connor Lamau. He tried hating on Lena Khan and then deleted in shame. The thing about the new Lena Khan mythology, she's a clever bureaucrat who takes very old laws and finds new ways to use them, is that Khan lost most of her big cases at the FTC and mostly failed in the dead laws effort. Yeah, except she won 90% of her cases. The only big cases she lost were in tech, Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard, and Meta / Within. Big case she won, Crozier Albertsons, Illumina Grail, Tapestry Capri, IQVIA, Propel Media, Novant Community Health Systems. Also, she was right even on the ones that she lost. Like the Microsoft one, which is a very famous example. The Blizzard Activision, Microsoft Activision Blizzard merger was dog. And even a bunch of gamers turned around and apologized to her for it. For being critical of it. It is funny that these guys who are like always outside of the tent. Like, I will say this much, okay? For as much as I on Matty Iglesias or Ezra Klein, they are actively a part of the Democratic Party's like mouthpiece machine. And they don't do this. This guy is not. This guy is a Redditor, okay? That's the difference. Like, as much as I on a lot of like the Neera Tandons of the world or, you know, Ezra Klein or Matty Iglesias, like, and they, I'm sure, have their criticisms of me. This kind of stuff is the work of people who are on the outside, who have no real investment in American politics at all, and are simply on the outside being like, why would the Democrats not turn around? Why would the Democrats turn around and allow Hassan to remain within the party? It's like, why are you hating from outside the club, bro? You can't even get in. What? I might have started a ball rolling. Is night code the best contact for what? It's my manager's email or my email on the fucking Twitter description. Check his location, maybe. Did Denims do apology too? 'Cause I don't know. Did Denims do apology too? 'Cause I don't know. 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 'Cause Oh, she hasn't yet. I deliberately didn't include Israel because I think the point is valid whether you're pro or anti-Israel. Either way, parroting propaganda for the CCP should be disqualifying. Might be that people try to turn it into Israel-Palestine discussion anyways, but the choice was deliberate. I predict this takes off. He's going to get slammed for leaving out Israel from his list of governments. No amount of, to be sure, I think Republicans are worse is going to save him from that omission with the anti-Piker crowd. Wait, what? Manhattan Institute guy. If this takes off, he's going to get slammed for leaving out Israel from his list of governments. Why are there so many like right-wingers who actively fantasize about like the Democrats deplatforming me or something? Like, why is this even a point of contention? All these losers know who you are. Yeah, it's just like, I want to respond to this by being like, it's because they love that and they hate you because you suck. It's pretty funny to make this argument because like the Democrats didn't listen to any of my concerns and they lost the election. Not to say that I'm like, you know, holding the keys to winning elections or whatever, but not only did they invite me to the DNC, they literally revoked my press credentials live at the DNC in front of 70,000 people in a New York Times journalist who was profiling me at the time. And then guess what? They lost the election anyway. So maybe it turns out that their opinion wasn't great on Israel and a litany of other problems that they are now coming to terms with as well. Every single thing that I brought up as a problem, as a broader holistic problem within the Democratic Party, whether it be their inability to address the immigration crisis or at least counter message against the reactionary Republican framing, or obviously refusing to do anything about Israel or even saying anything about the Palestinian plight or taking active measures to curb back Israel's violence, unlimited bloodshed. All of that was a problem. All of that was consequential, and it played a role in the Democrats losing. I will say this much. I don't think these guys are actual Democrats. I think these are the type of people who see the Democratic Party from the outside and don't want the Democrats to become a winning party. They don't want the left flank Democrats to win. They don't want any kind of like even self-described socialists to win any power within the party. So their goal is not to like vote for the Democrats necessarily, but to sit on the outside, sit on the margins and be like, listen to me instead. I really do hope. And there are plenty of people like this already in the confines of the Democratic Party, the establishment Democrats, but they're being listened to less and less every single year. So you are referencing 1 million PowerPoints and 1 million think tank meetings, both liberal and conservative. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's not like they listened to you and then lost. You ended up being right and they hate you for it. I mean, I don't think these guys necessarily care. I think this is the type of guy who would rather have Donald Trump than Bernie Sanders. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think a lot of people would rather have outright fascists than a moderate social democrat. That's it.
For media outlets and politicians, that anger is their single most powerful tool because they can tell you where to direct it. And they don't even really care who it is, so long as it's not them. That's why it changes all the time. Sometimes it's trans people, sometimes it's immigrants. Most recently, it's been poor people. There's been this whole war going on over food stamps because when the government shut down, 42 million Americans lost access to SNAP benefits. Now, that's an objective piece of information, an inarguable statistic, but depending on how it's presented to you, it may lead you to draw a drastically different conclusion than somebody else. For some, it might put into perspective how dire the situation has gotten. Like, surely there's underlying issues with a system that's allowed 12% of its population to be unable to afford food. Alternatively, you might hear that and think, wait a minute, my tax dollars are paying for these greedy freeloaders? I'm busting my ass over here to barely make ends meet, and these leeches are using my money to buy cookies? That's not fair. And all it takes is highlighting a story or two of someone taking advantage of the system to make you think there's this rampant issue, that you're expected to feed all of these people with money you barely have enough of to feed yourself. This narrative has been used since the 70s because it's very effective. You work hard, they're lazy, this program is bad. It's easier than ever now to push this narrative because you can just AI generate a video of a fat lady screaming in Walmart and get everyone pissed off. But in order to properly analyze this, let's take a look at the data. First of all, SNAP only makes up about 1.5% of the overall federal budget. Less than 1/8 of what we spend on defense and 1/8 of what we spend
$75 out of the pockets of the average taxpayer.
Just on interest on the debt that we owe. By my math, cutting this program would only save the average taxpayer a couple $100s a year. And of course, that's assuming that if they were to cut it, they would send you a refund in the mail. No, I'm pretty sure they would still take the same amount, but instead of reinvesting it into the economy, which is what SNAP ultimately does, they would just buy some missiles or send a pile of cash to Argentina. Second of all, by definition, the majority of SNAP recipients fall under the umbrella of elderly, disabled, veterans, full-time caretakers, or just temporarily unemployed. Remember, not everybody who isn't working does so because they don't want to. It is very hard to find and keep a job right now. The fact that SNAP spending ebbs and flows so closely with the overall state of the economy should be proof that this program is primarily used for temporary relief. Even still, many of the people on SNAP do work, and about 70% of the ones that do work full-time. That doesn't seem like a laziness problem, that seems like a wage problem. They need supplemental income to survive because of how little they're being paid. Of those full-time employees, their two most common employers were McDonald's and Walmart, who combined to earn $23 billion in profits last year. $23 billion, and you're telling me they can't afford to pay their employees enough so that they don't need government assistance? See, what that means is you wouldn't have to help pay for these people's food if their employer, a nearly trillion...
Remember, not only is that pure profit, but also people will say the profit margins are low in the grocery sector, and there's truth to this, except the reality of the matter is there's a tremendous amount of cutting you could do in other expenditures in order to, pay your workers a better wage, for example, or offer them better benefits, for example, okay? Whether it be on the marketing front, whether it be on the lobbying side of things, legal counsel, labor lawyers, all this stuff. So remember, profit margins are not the end all be all, okay? Whenever people talk about profit margins, that doesn't necessarily mean that, executive pay is another great example of this. All the many benefits, all of that still goes into the overall expenses. Son, you're in Ireland. I think it's time for you to be baptized in the Catholic faith. Sure, fuck it. Why not? I'm Catholic now. Dogan Piker. I'm Catholic. I'm Irish Catholic. Dogan Piker. Who's your favorite streamer, YouTuber from Ireland? I don't think I have one. But I mean, I really like Super iPash Wolf. He's dope. About time you cash in your IRA to join the IRA.
Corporation just paid them a livable wage. You're more upset at the people using the program than the companies who have put them in a position where they even need it in the first place. Also, Walmart double dips here. The majority of food stamps are redeemed at Walmart. So not only do they save money by underpaying their staff, but their revenue then gets subsidized by this program because that's where people tend to use it. Final statistic, about a third of SNAP recipients, over 12 million of them, are children. What's the argument there? Are they not working hard enough? What, you don't want to get a job just because you're 7? Like, can we stop for 1 second to think about what you're saying here? You have let somebody convince you that in this situation, the only way to make your life better is if 12 million children starve. So I want to ask, who is more to blame here? A bunch of kids who got born into poverty, or CEOs with more money than anybody could spend in 1,000 lifetimes who expect you to solve the problem that they helped create? For some people, it doesn't matter what you say about capitalism, they will still go to war for it, even if it's not working for them.
Yeah, there it is. You're defending capitalism, and here you are, devoid of capital. You got no capital. You got your entire yearly revenue is generated from your wage labor. You are a laborer, okay? The minimal amount in your 401k is not making you a capitalist. You're sitting here bitchless, devoid of capital, no factory deed, no riz whatsoever. Your smoke ain't loud, your bitches ain't bad, you got no bitches, and you are still defending capitalism. It's not gonna happen. Yeah, but one day I will make it. And then those pesky poors better watch out.
Speaking, it's probably not. You'll try to criticize a multi-billionaire who's not paying enough taxes, and people will defend them like, hey, it's not their fault. They're just taking advantage of loopholes like any smart business person would.
Or even with like Drew. I mean, he did this in the nicest way possible. But they'll be like, says you, big YouTuber, multi-millionaire guy, talking about capitalism, hypocrite much? And it's like, that is the dumbest person, dude. You can't argue against that guy. You can't argue against something so illogical where it's like, excuse me, Mr. Big multi-millionaire YouTube guy talking about the rich hypocrite much? Okay, well, you're broke and you're defending capitalism, dumbass. At least I'd rather be a class traitor as a rich person than what you're doing. You're just being stupid. It's the greatest marketing scheme, dude. It's so powerful. The propaganda is so powerful that even if someone is being like, hey man, better things are possible, you just still go, no, it's not. Shut the fuck up. You're stupid and a hypocrite for saying that.
Okay, so then we agree there's a problem with the rules, right? If they're just exploiting the system, then maybe the system shouldn't be so easy to exploit. We've reached a point where a lot of the core principles of a free market no longer apply. Like the idea that you can vote with your dollar. I get to pick which businesses I support, therefore the best ones will succeed and the worst ones will fail. Yeah, except when one company is allowed to corner the market and price out all their competition, suddenly there isn't any.
And we would have small businesses tell us if they walked into a Walmart or a Costco, the retail price at those stores, the price on the shelves at those stores is lower than the wholesale price a small business is getting. And so there are huge disparities here.
And that's now feeding into itself, right? The more dire the economy is for everyone, the less freedom they have.
Rollins, Joe Biden increased food stamps program funding by 40%. Now we continue to roll that back. Just gratitude and joy for this work. So grateful to you.
So now as we continue to roll that back. So the partnership in Making America Healthy Again is also in food stamps, but a lot of what Bobby and I are doing together is...
Dude, 16 million kids rely on food stamps. Let me tell you something, okay? They are stoked. Legit trying to learn here. Do you count as bourgeois? What's the line when you cross into that class? I'm not going to get into this again and again and again. There is no exact science on this. Especially because of how retirement works. Okay? In this day and age. If you are, oh my God. While you are capable of being a productive worker, a productive wage laborer, if the overwhelming majority, if not entirety, or at the very least like 50 to 60% of your yearly income is coming from your wages, and if you stopped working, capital accumulation would not be able to make up for that lack of wages, then you are a wage laborer, technically, or at least your interests are closer to a laborer. You have to pretend it's a good faith question. No, I think that person is not asking it in a bad faith way. No, it's not about do you need to budget your paycheck or not. The designation between a capital owner and a wage laborer, bourgeois versus proletariat, is about your relations to the means of production. Do you own the means of production? Do you hire wage laborers to accumulate profit? Okay. You need definitions posted, Haas. It's not my definition. No, this is not my definition. I'm describing to you like the most basic point about Marxism. What do you mean my definition? It's not mine. It's not even Marxism necessarily. It's just Karl Marx's analysis of how capitalism works. That's it.
They're deciding what to pay for. Amazon is certainly not the only place to buy things, but historically speaking, it's almost always the cheapest and most convenient. So how do you convince somebody who's also been forced to pinch pennies due to their own circumstances that they need to spend more time and money buying that same thing from a local mom and pop shop when they could just click 3 buttons and have it magically appear at their door in 3 hours? It's not even really fair to impose that because that person is also struggling, but then the cycle continues. The small business closes, Amazon and Walmart extend their reach even further, and once all competition is defeated, then they can just raise the prices to be whatever they want. They can train an algorithm to charge you the maximum price they think you'll pay at any given moment. Now, one of the most common counter-arguments you'll hear if you bring up the idea of raising taxes—
dynamic pricing. Come to a grocery store near you, by the way—
on the ultra wealthy is that, well, if you do that, they're just gonna leave. First of all, no, they're not. That's a bluff they've been using for years, perpetuated by media networks owned by, you guessed it, rich people who don't want their taxes to go up. Sure, a few of them might leave, but the kinds of people who are willing to go to the trouble of moving their entire business from New York City to like Kissimmee, Florida, are probably already doing everything they can to avoid paying any taxes at all. It doesn't seem like a very productive mindset to cater to this parasitic minority at the expense of everybody else. Second of all, oh my God, can we grow some balls here?
You don't understand. They're not gonna like it if we raise their taxes.
Do you hear yourself? Do you hear how pathetic you sound? Okay, so what? We can't do anything then? That's it? It's over? They won? Your plan is that we should just give up and let the billionaires have whatever they want.
No.
Buddy, we've...
No. Kissimmee is not called K-Town. I'm sorry. That's crazy. That's crazy. There's one K-Town. It's called Koreatown. You seem frustrated? I don't blame you. Take a break from chat if you need to. I'm just tired, man. Again, I'm going to repeat myself, but I got back from China, went to Los Angeles, and then after my brief stint in Los Angeles for a couple days, I flew immediately to Ireland. I just got off of a 10-hour flight, did a podcast for 2 hours, and then immediately went live. It's normal. I'm just tired, and I am going to go to bed. It is, 12:30 here. I don't even know what time zone I'm in at this point. Like, I don't know what the time zone that my body's in. I was waiting for... Isn't Kissimmee bad in... Kissimmee is bad in Arabic, yes. It means like your mother's pussy, I think.
We tried that, and that's not working either. Third of all, this criticism is predicated on an idea that taxation essentially has a bell curve to it, where after a certain rate, your overall revenue actually decreases because people will lose the incentive to work as hard or, like you're saying, move away. With this in mind, there have been studies done by economists who believe that every country has its own ideal rate for maximum efficiency. However, the implication that raising taxes would cause the overall revenue to go down would only be true if we were on the tail end of this bell curve, and we are nowhere close to that. So if your main concern is to maximize total revenue, it's pretty clear which direction we should be moving in. Otherwise, the very metric your point is referencing contradicts the argument you're trying to make. Now, even having said all of that, I'm not going to sit here and act like just raising taxes is an immediate fix to all of our problems, because we'd still have to rely on elected officials to actually use that money in a sensible way. I'd be happy to contribute more if I knew it was going to better healthcare or nicer parks or public transportation. But if my money's just going to be used to blow up a hospital on the other side of the world, then yeah, maybe I'd rather just give it to a food bank. I don't know all the answers, because at the end of the day, no matter how hard I try to expand my legacy beyond it, I'm still just the road work ahead guy. But I do know that this amount of wealth inequality that's showing zero signs of slowing down anytime soon is not sustainable. Turns out that actually every single thing in the world becoming a for-profit commodity, from housing to healthcare, is just a way to enrich a few people at the cost of many. And I have to wonder if we've finally reached a point now where the greed has gone too far, that it's now so impossible to ignore that no amount of gaslighting about how the economy is good actually will convince people who are dying because they can't afford to go to the doctor that...
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know. Maybe I'm too pessimistic on that note, but I do feel like there is an endless amount of distractions for the average American to hyper focus on, that they quite literally will still find a way to be like, I don't know. Maybe it's not the system. I mean, voting for Donald Trump is a great reminder of that, people turning around and voting for Donald Trump, people turning around and voting for any Republican, and AI slop too. Yes, AI slop is another. There aren't many adequate distractions from not being able to get an operation. No, it's not that. My point is, there are so many people who experience that hardship and don't immediately tie that back to greed, don't immediately tie that back to putting profits over people, over the interests of people, and how The system is designed that way. It's that simple.
This is just how life should be. History shows that, unfortunately, sometimes things have to get worse before they can get better. And if this is what it takes for a return to class solidarity, then I guess at least we're closer to that than we've been in a long time. We just need to put down our phones, set aside our differences for a little bit, and unite on this one issue. They want us divided because they're afraid of how strong we would be if we stood together. Do not fall for it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go argue on Reddit about how Ghost of Yote is woke because they didn't make the main character hot enough for me. Thank you for watching.
Banger. Greed is destroying the world. From 1 day ago with 1.7 million views. Oh my God. I'm going to say I'm quitting my job. I can't compete with this.